Irene Yu, thanks so much for being on the show today. I have to say right off the bat, you provided some advice recently that has just paid off dividends for me. So we'll talk about it in a second, but I just wanted to thank you because I'd be remiss not to do so.
Yeah, more than happy to offer any advice that is helpful. So I'm glad that worked out for you, John.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about it in a minute, but first, I want to learn a little bit more about you and what you're up to these days.
Sure. So I'm Irene. I am the CEO and founder of Skiplevel, where our mission is to make technical literacy more accessible to everyone and not just developers. And we mostly work with product managers, but we've also worked with sales, operations, customer success, marketing, really just anyone who works in tech that wants to become more technical and understand software. I used to also be a software engineer, and I'm also a startup advisor uh, for product management. And yeah, I've been working on Skiplevel for about, oh gosh, 2.5 years now. We were founded in 2021, and it's been growing, and it's been quite a journey. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I can see where there's so much value there. I mean, I have my answer to this question, but it's more important to hear yours. Why did you start it? Why did you think there was
Yeah.
a need for skip level?
Totally. I was a software engineer for almost 10 years, probably around 8 years. And I've worked at a lot of different companies from agencies to startups and then Amazon. And so I've worked with a lot of different product managers. And every company I went to, every product manager I worked with, I've always had the struggle of being able to communicate with them because it felt like there was always just this like push and pull and just not being able to understand each other. And I saw firsthand how that affected the product manager, but also the team and me and the business as a whole, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it wasn't until I was working at Amazon and after an engineering meeting, I had a product manager come to me and say, Irene, I have no idea what happened in that meeting. I didn't understand anything. Can you help me? And so what transpired after that was I started doing what I call tech mentorship sessions with her. So I would meet with her twice a week and on an ad hoc basis. Usually it's before a meeting or while she's writing business requirements to kind of help her think through technical feasibility and answer any questions. And it was through that experience that I gained so much more empathy for product managers. It was through that experience that I was like, oh, yeah, why would you know any of this stuff? This is not what you do on a day-to-day basis. Like, what opportunity do you have to learn any of this, right? So what I thought was common knowledge in software in the industry is not actually common knowledge. And as I was working with her one-on-one, there were so many like assumptions and misconceptions that she had, and I had to go, oh, no, GitHub and Git are two separate things. They're not the same at all. And and so through that experience, I was able to help her build a lot more confidence. She was able to kind of walk into meetings now and know what an API was and be able to just communicate a lot more confidently with engineers and write better business requirements. And so it was through that experience of helping her with her imposter syndrome that I was like, oh, I think this is like a really big gap for a lot of product managers, and they don't really know where to go to get the technical education that they need because most technical education is created for developers, right? So
Right.
that was kind of the long version of my motivation for starting Skiplevel.
Yeah, that's interesting. So where I'm in the product business and or the product function, and I can talk about all the times I've walked into the room with an immense feeling of imposter syndrome, the great term that you use there. I'm sure it's happened this week, right? And feeling that from the product management position, I think it could be really daunting. But you've actually lived in this world on the other side, right? You've been in on the engineering side and I'm guessing have seen where the need is there too, right? And working with a product manager and others on the team who might need that technical education.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the perspective of product managers is just different from the perspective of engineering, right?
Yeah,
Engineering, the customer is important, 1,000%, absolutely. But at the end of the day, the engineer's main job is to build. And guess what? It's really hard to build. So if the product manager wants, a feature out, let's say, and they want it done quickly, well, we have to find a way to help engineers build as quickly as they can. And there are different ways of doing that.
If we want it done quickly, we always want it done quickly. Isn't that right?
Right, you're right.
The audience here is typically product managers. I think I can make that joke. But yeah, no, I see your point. Now, how might it help a product manager outside of the Scrum room? Not in conversing with the engineers, but just in thinking about a roadmap and thinking about a strategy for the product. Would it be helpful there, having
Yeah.
that technical education? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, taking the example of the product manager that I mentored, when I would sit down with her and when she's just starting to do product ideation, just thinking about, the problem and what possible solutions are, I would sit with her. And feasibility is such a really big thing in technical implementation in software, right? You can come up with a solution, but if it's not feasible and you don't understand what the technical trade-offs are, when it comes to scalability or time to build or how hard it is to build, right? If you're not
Right.
able to think through those trade-offs or even know what those trade-offs are or that they even exist, your ability to write requirements and how quickly those get approved is going to be quite a bit lower. So if you're able to kind of build your technical acumen, understand what are the technical trade-offs that engineers have to think about when they're thinking about solutions and building, the faster you can write user stories and think through what is the feasibility of the solution for the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, I've written a lot about this, and I've, based on my own experiences, and I think the best product decisions that I've made, and this isn't a brag because I've made plenty of terrible ones, but the best ones I made were around quality and really the basics, right? Will this thing be fast enough? Will it be scalable enough? So I can see where, what you're doing and really just technical education in general can be really beneficial there. Question for you. Do you think is there a sweet spot of kind of where a product manager should live on that technical side that's better for the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is that there is. One of the things that I've noticed is sometimes when product managers, they come from a software building background as myself, there's that very strong problem solving mindset. And so sometimes I notice that you can become so technical and so deep in the weeds of implementation that you can start telling the engineering team what to do. And you start kind of like pushing that edge, just a little bit. But in reality, as a product manager, you want to focus on the product and you want to focus on the customer and you want to push the engineering team to build. So,
yeah,
for example, engineers, what they really want is they want to build that cool, innovative thing, and they want to use that new technology and do, fancy things sometimes. But sometimes those decisions aren't always in the service of building the fastest way and the fastest timeline and the most minimal lovable product, right?
yeah.
So as a product manager, you want to take them out of the weeds of implementation a little bit and say, hey guys, let's focus. We need to finish building this in a month. What is the fastest way that we can get this done?
Right.
So that's one of the mindsets. The other one I would say is, again, when it comes to technical understanding, there are different levels. You can have a broader understanding of technology, or you can go really deep into the weeds of of how do you build software, right? How do you implement software? And you can go really, really deep into that, right? But that becomes the realm of software engineering. If you're a product manager, you don't want to go too deep into implementation. You don't necessarily have to know how to code, right? But you need to know enough to have a broad understanding of the fundamentals, the trade-offs, how you communicate with engineers, and being able to build empathy with engineers and being able to help them to build in the fastest way with the highest quality as possible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the reason I asked is I have seen this, I don't know if I'd call it a trap, I was about to, but I've seen very technical product managers stumble a little bit because they get in that room and they want to talk about the how, and to your point, the what and the design, the technical design of it. And I think that can be problematic. And as I mentioned, I was looking at your curriculum and thinking, gosh, I got to take a lot of these courses. I want to take a lot of these courses. I think they'd be helpful. On the database side, I'm pretty strong. And I've fallen into that trap of saying we need to index that column or whatever it might be, or it's the wrong join that we have across these tables, and I have to stop myself. So I think that's great advice. And I think if I'm putting all of your answers together, it sounds like PMs need to write, basically have the right questions to ask. Do I have that right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. The thing that I always tell my students is your job is not to memorize every technical detail, right? Think back to when you were in college and you took calculus. I barely remember what I learned in calculus, to be honest. But, I have a general understanding of what goes into calculus, or what is like geometry. If you brought the books back to me and I had to Google, I could probably Google and kind of figure it out because I have that general education, right? So a lot of times product managers will focus on memorizing the technical details. And I always tell them, you don't have to memorize the technical details. What the skill you are actually trying to develop is your ability to ask the right questions and being able to Google, right? So what does it mean to ask the right questions? The right questions are basically well-informed questions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you walk into a room and people are talking about different things, and you can kind of tell if this person knows what they're talking about by the questions that they ask. Because sometimes the questions have nothing to do with anything, and it's because they don't have that fundamental understanding, right? So
Yeah.
to be able to increase your ability to ask well-informed questions.
Yeah. What does that mean for trust? I think the communication, the team dynamics is so important. Where I've, been most successful, or the products that I've worked on have been most successful, and there's a really good team behind it. So what does that mean for the engineers, or even for the designers, the QA staff, when the product manager is at the right level or the sweet spot?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, influence and respect, right, is really
Yeah.
big. This is not just for engineering or software industry. It's for anywhere you go, any facet of life, right? Having that respect and that influence, people immediately want to work with you. It's just easier to collaborate with everyone. And in terms of software, being able to have discussions about what's being built, how long it takes to build, what are the complexities, the considerations, the trade-offs, what the blockers are, and doing it in a way that engineers and QA and designers feel like you know what you're talking about. That is what's really going to move the needle in terms of respect and in terms of that influence, right? Not having closing that gap of being able to communicate and being able to empathy really helps that flow in team dynamics.
Yeah, that's great. And I like how you mentioned the trade-offs too. A former manager of mine used to say that product management is risk mitigation. And I think at first that just went totally over my head, or I may have rolled my eyes. It felt kind of business schooly, which I need to be careful because I teach at business school. But it felt a little academic. And the more I've worked in the last few years since working with him, it's really rung true. We are in the business of making sure that we're placing the right bets, and I like that thought process of, if I know the technical detail, especially if you're in obviously the software product management space, what risks might come with the decisions that we're making. And it feels like it's really hard to do if you don't have that technical background.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, because every stakeholder, as the product manager, you're managing a lot of stakeholders. And, it's really hard to make everyone happy. So you have to be able to prioritize what are the trade-offs if we make this decision versus that decision.
Yeah.
And then being able to kind of say no, right, to certain stakeholders, because you know what your priorities are, and having that technical understanding of what that feasibility is, what that timeline is going to go a really long way in a product manager's ability to do that.
So I teased it at the beginning. We should probably get there because people are probably wondering what advice you had given that had such a profound impact on me. And I'm not overstating or sugarcoating. It was really, really helpful and almost obvious. Like I thought, well, why don't I do this all the time? And I hadn't. Do you want to talk about what this show, by the way, is Get Scrappy. Try to give folks advice that they can bring in to work with them tomorrow or even today, right? What are things we can do right away that are going to make a difference in our product management careers? You've got a great piece of advice that a PM might be able to act on right now. Do you want to hand that out?
Yeah, absolutely. This was actually something that happened to me as a software engineer that a product manager actually said to me that really disarmed me. And so it really, I don't know, it made me a little bit emotional actually. So so well, first let's talk about the dynamics of product and devs.
Sure.
At the end of the day, the developers are the ones that have to build the product. So the product managers and really every other stakeholders are really dependent on engineers to do this thing, right? They have to build. And sometimes it can be hard as a product manager. You're kind of sitting there, you're going, hey, how's it going? I need this,
Right. What's the
I
status?
need. Yeah, and that can be very stressful and a lot of pressure on the engineering team, right? Because they're going, look, I'm busting my butt over here, and this is
Yeah.
hard. Software engineering is really not hard. It's very complicated stuff. And it can sometimes feel as if, the product manager is asking for a lot.
It
And
feels parasitic instead of symbiotic, right? It's like
yeah,
we're always taking and we're not really, yeah, I totally see what you're
exactly.
saying.
Exactly. And that can be very damaging. That sort of mindset can be very damaging to the engineering and product dynamic, right? Relationship. But the way we really want to see it is that product and engineering, you're still one team. You're still, working on a product, the same product, and you're working on the same mission. So if we want to have that teamwork collaboration, it's about what can I do and what can you do in service of this mission together. And
Yeah.
so one question that I was asked by a product manager that really disarmed me was, and I've never been asked this question before by a product manager ever. And this product manager said to me, Irene, what's one thing that I can take off your plate that will make your job easier right now? What is something that I can do to make your job easier right now? I've never been asked that from a product manager.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, there's kind of a lot of things that I don't want to be doing. So in that specific instance, the engineering team was also responsible for customer tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you get all types of customer tickets. And sometimes these customer tickets don't actually require an engineer to actually respond to these tickets.
Yeah. Right.
So what this product manager did is he actually started going over the tickets first. Any tickets that he could respond to, he would do it first. And then
Filtering them down. Just filtering them down for you. Yeah.
filtering it down. And then anything that he deems as necessary for Irene to that, he would then let me know.
Yeah.
But then he started taking ownership. And you know what? I had so much more time to focus on coding and building the feature that he wanted. And it made me feel amazing. He not was saying, hey, we need to build fast and we need to build well, but he was actively playing a part in the software development process.
Yeah.
And that for me was just such a game changer. He put himself in the game. And that was just a really great way to build our relationship and know that he was just part of the team.
That's great. That's amazing. And as I mentioned, I heard you say that, or I heard you offer that advice, and I said, I'm gonna give it a shot. And I asked our development team that same question, and they sort of came to a consensus on what it was. I didn't ask one person. I asked our team of, I don't know, 7 or 8 folks. And they said there's some legacy code that's lying around and our customers are still using it. A couple customers are still using it, but because of that, we can't retire it. We've got to test it all the time. We've got to maintain it. We've modernized it into something new. Can you just work on sunsetting that thing? And I said, that'll take some time, but it's not something we can do today. But I will start to work with our customer success team, our customers, obviously, get them, with marketing help and customer success, we'll move them off that onto the new thing, and just showing the progress. And I started giving stand-up updates around it. And
Wow.
the nice thing was I didn't need them to make this happen, which is probably why they asked me to do it, right? I could go off and sort of do this on my own without distracting the engineers. And one day, and I'm getting closer, I'm not quite there yet, I'm going to show up and say, it's done. We're retiring it, next month, and they can remove it from the code base, and that would be the only commitment on their side. So I'm sure as a former engineer, you can appreciate legacy stuff getting torn out of the
John, I
code
have
base.
chills all over my body. You have no idea.
Yeah.
It's like it's things like that that engineers have in the back of their mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
causing anxiety all the time.
Nagging. Yep.
But you know what? If you didn't ask, they might not have told you how big of an issue it was.
And I would never have guessed.
And you wouldn't
I'm not going to start my day saying, what do we sunset today? Right. I mean,
totally right.
that's not
And
something
in
that's
your
interesting.
mind, John, you might be thinking like, what is taking so long? Why is this taking so long to build?
Yeah.
That communication gap, the things are unsaid that we don't know are unsaid unless we ask. All right. So this question is kind of a magical question and really gets, and I love that you asked an entire engineering team what you can do to help. That magical question just, builds so much more team collaboration and understanding and just communication across the board. So it's awesome. And I'm really glad you took my advice. I think it might have been a Twitter post maybe. And you're able to do that for your engineering team. That's awesome, John.
I think I saw the Skiplevel video that I was watching. But yeah, maybe both places. But feel free to tweet it again though, because I could use the reminder. We should do it. We shouldn't just do it once, right? We should do it often. Well, Irene, this has been incredible. Really good advice that people can take with them from this, and great hearing your story and why this stuff is so important. Anything else you wanted to say about Skiplevel or yourself, or anything you wanted to plug?
Yeah, just Skiplevel is a training program that I am extremely proud of. And it takes all of my experience as a software engineer, working with product managers, mentoring product managers to create this one-step guide in what you need to know as a product manager for technology. And I think it's a really, really great program. There's also a community aspect to it where you can ask questions from me. So if anyone is, serious about finally taking the step to become more confident in their technical abilities, definitely check out Skiplevel.
Yeah, my plug for you would be I checked out this, I think it was a sample curriculum, but you had right at the forefront, I think it was cloud computing and like scalability, vertical, horizontal scalability, like stuff that really matters for the success of the product. You're getting that, it seems like, don't let me misstate your curriculum, but it seems like you're getting that info right off the bat when you start off, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's actually in the first module, which is like the foundational module.
Right. Yep.
And you know what, something else that a lot of my past students have said they really love, that really was a game changer for them, was that after each module, you're learning some, pretty high level, sometimes complicated technical stuff. You actually get to do an exercise where you use a real tool that engineers use. And you actually do stuff like you mock an API, right? You actually create like an architecture diagram. You actually learn how to read it. You actually learn how to use like a database tool and what it means to actually add data into a database. So that kind of hands-on exercise is really what builds that empathy with devs. And so that's really powerful.
Yeah, like learning to drive, right? You need to get out on the road at some point to figure it out. Well, Irene, can't thank you enough. This has been excellent. We've been trying to get you on the show now for a while, and that's saying a lot because we've only had 2 episodes. And this is why. Really learned a lot from this. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.